IELTS fake teachers, so many of them on the internet right now. You see day after day YouTube videos and online videos of so-called fake gurus sitting down talking to an Indian person or a Japanese person or a Chinese speaker and giving them a score of 8.0 or 6.0 on the IELTS speaking tests. And then they go even further by telling you these are the sort of words you should be doing. Um, First and foremost, they are fake teachers. And one of the reasons is, in fact, many of the reasons you can be seen from the fact that they don't show you their actual IELTS certification. And when they do, they blank out many things and gives you the impression that these are truly real teachers who know their stuff. But in actual fact, are these teachers qualified in the first place? Do they have a background in English language? Or do they have a background in literature instead? Do they have a background in English language education? You have a case where you have a student who claims on the internet, right? This lady, I don't know if you know, on YouTube, she claims that she has a 8.0 on her IELTS speaking score, but nobody has seen any evidence of it, right? And why would you want to learn from a student who goes online and tells you they get a 8.0 or 9.0, right? If I want to learn something and get a really good score, I go through a qualified person, somebody who has a background, say, in a master's in English language, in education, right? That would be the perfect person. The second most perfect person will obviously be somebody who was a IELTS examiner themselves, who had many years of IELTS teaching experience, right? That person would have understood how the IELTS rubrics or marking specifications will look like, right? Why would you go online and you study from someone who doesn't have a background, let alone experience in assessment of IELTS speaking or writing, and then they tell you, this is how I got my grade, so this is how you should get it. In the first place, there is no evidence that these individuals are actually getting the score that they claim that they are getting. For all you know, they could be an Asian person who works in or who migrated to Australia or England, and they grew up there, and then they go online and they tell people that, look, this is how I got my score for IELTS. I think this is very ingenuous, very dishonest, very misleading. I think it's important to draw three distinctions. Okay, first, ask yourself, is that individual a qualified teacher? In other words, is that individual a qualified registered teacher? Number two, ask yourself, what qualification does that particular instructor or teacher has who is teaching you IELTS? Does that person has a master's in English language education? Or does that person has a master's in applied linguistics? Or does that person has a master's in engineering? Or does that person has a master's in uh, English language? Or does that person has a master's in literature? Now, all these things means different thing, right? If you're looking for a qualified instructor, that person must have at least a master's in English language education. All right. Again, I repeat that, a master's in English language education, not a master's in applied linguistics, right? Not a master's of arts. An applied linguistics person does not necessarily is able to actually teach, because that person doesn't have any teaching qualification at all. That person doesn't have a postgraduate diploma in teaching, right? So be careful, right? These people are coming up and they're making claims that they actually are qualified people who are able to get you the scores that you need. And that's ridiculous, right? And very dishonest. Number two, if the person has a master's in literature, that doesn't mean that person can actually teach IELTS. That person can tell you things about stories in books, right? But that has nothing to do with actual pedagogical practices in the teaching of a particular topic, right? A particular subject. How you teach is very different from what you learn, right? Those are two different knowledge spheres. So I see people making claims that they have a master's in or a bachelor's in English literature and they can teach. That's ridiculous. Before you can actually teach, you need to go through some teacher training programs, right? You need to have a very clear idea about your content, right? And it has to be tested through many batches of students, okay? Number two, so be very careful with people who tells you they have a master's in applied linguistics, they have a master's in literature, and they can actually teach the content. Those are different aspects of the content that you need, right? They do not focus, these subjects like masters in applied linguistics and literature, they do not focus on literacy skills. That is not part of their training, right? That's why it's called a Masters of Arts, right? Whereas in a Masters of English Language Education, is specifically focused, right? I mean, you wouldn't send your kid to a kindergarten, right? Whose teacher has a bachelor's in cooking, would you? You wouldn't do that, right? You would prefer to send your kid to a kindergarten, right? Or where the teachers at the kindergarten at least have a bachelor's in childhood education. Guys, this is knowledge-based economy, right? So don't be fooled by a lot of these fake gurus, fake teachers, fake ex-teacher students coming up. You can have cases where you have a native speaker who has no background in the teaching uh, and pedagogical knowledge and practices of literacy skills coming up online, and they are actually telling you that, and in fact, they go one step further. They actually role play IELTS speaking and examination. I think that is fatuous, it's ridiculous, because what they're doing, what they're role playing, is not actually what is happening in the IELTS context, right? In particular for IELTS speaking, you see this guy sitting down and he's nodding his head, and the other person who is a student is trying their very best to get the score that they need. But that's not how it's actually being done, right? There is a disparity even in the sort of questions and preparations and so forth. So it's very dishonest, disingenuous, um, and I think there's a need that someone calls them out on this, right? So be mindful. The next point is obviously the experience of the teachers. How many years of experience do these individuals have? Do they really know about their subject, right? You're talking about IELTS examination. This is a very high stake examination where it can affect your chances of getting a job, your qualification and entry into a university, your migration visas if you're looking to migrate. So therefore, it's a high stake test, and you pay, and it's expensive, right? For some students, it is, right? And therefore you want to not put yourself in a situation where you're wasting time because of simple entertainment, right? So be aware of the background of these instructors. I would advise that you look at their years of teaching experience, right?